Back on Inside Tennessee this morning, my colleague John North and the House Speaker Cameron Sexton with us. Susan.
There's going to be a special session sometime in August, end of August. And the purpose of that from the governor's call is to talk about guns and are there orders of protection, red flag laws, several things that have been discussed. We've had Jason Zachary on here. He says, no, that's not going to happen in this special session. Where are you on that? And one other article that I read was talking about even if we had orders of protection and so forth, the TBI in Tennessee is backed up 230,000 data points that are not people that have had some criminal history, and they're not on that. So if I went to buy a gun and I had a criminal history from some...
You might. We haven't checked.
You might. I don't own a gun. But, I mean, is it feasible for us to do anything about that? First of all, catching the TBI up, and then what do you think is going to happen in special session?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think first you need to see what laws you have on the book and see what is working. And if they're not working, why are they not working? We currently have an emergency involuntary commitment that reads very much like a red flag law without removing the guns. But it's not really being used, and so we're trying to dive in to see what the issue is. Is it law enforcement? Is it the parameters? Is the bar too high to hold them? So why do we have something on the books that's not working apparently?
I can answer that question for you.
Yeah.
We don't have the mental health facilities to put those people in.
And that's where I'm going to get. I totally agree with you. In our state, we have 577 beds is all we have. And when you go back to the 1970s and 80s, we decreased our mental health beds by 91%. And what happened is all those people went to prison, all those people went to homelessness, they were out on the streets. You see them, we saw a few coming into this area today.
And they're in our jails.
And so we need to expend money to open up state inpatient beds again. You need to have long-term care. We went to community-based, that helps some people. You go to crisis unit, that helps some, but you do have to have long-term help. And I agree with Don on that issue that we need to. Special session.
Yeah, is that something that could come out
it
of
could.
the
It depends on if he my
on the
understanding
call.
is it could be the call. He's going to do it about constitutional rights. I don't know if it'll be Second Amendment or if it's more broad. Public safety potentially. That could be a public safety issue. We do have the money to do that. You just have to have the will to do it. People will say in the 70s, 80s, and 90s that mental health hospitals or state-run hospitals weren't good. They didn't treat people nice. I think we can do that differently in today's world. Red flag law, I don't think you'll see us pass a red flag law, but I think what we also need to do is talk to TBI, and if they have 230,000 data points that's in the criminal system, maybe we need to move to a uniform court system where it's easier to get those data points in and get them into the database in real time instead of having a 12-year wait period, which is what it seems
Could
of
you
TBI.
put something in, again, depending on the call from the governor, but could something like that be part of the special session of the TBI?
Yeah, because that's public safety. So then once again, you kind of are bridging the thing, and that's where it's important to be what the call is. I think the call is going to have to be a little broad.
Well, do you think a red flag law that has due process, despite what Representative Zachary suggested that it didn't, but that has due process, much akin to the order of protection, that might be a good idea that might solve something? Because there's one thing we have to get out of the way. Every mass shooting, every bad use of a firearm is not related to mental health. In fact, it's a much smaller percentage than we probably give it credit for. So do you think that a red flag law might be a good start, at least, at saving at least one child in this state?
Well, I think what we have is emergency involuntary commitment, which is sort of like a red flag law.
But it doesn't take a weapon away.
Well, it could if you actually commit them into a facility involuntarily, it would. And so the question then becomes, most red flag laws do not have the mental health component.
Because some people aren't mentally ill that need to have the red flag law applied to them.
But then you start getting into the question about, okay, how severe do they have to be? What does that mean? Because order of protection in a domestic thing is very arbitrary on what it could happen, and what we've seen in Florida.
10 days, a hearing in 10 days.
I understand, but some people use it to get at the other person in a divorce as
sure.
well. Right? And so it's used as a tool when you make somebody mad. And I don't
leave
think
it at the hands of a judge.
But you have to be very careful, because what happened in Florida, they've had 8,000, and the judges in the initial part, from when I've talked to the speakers down there, is the judges almost automatically approve it regardless. And then they get you to a point in the future to have that hearing. And so it's almost like it's an automatic removal of guns, whether or not.
But
so
is it worth it, if we are careful, is it worth it as an effort to try to save people that are getting killed in mass shootings with high-powered rifles, and we can have a whole nother discussion about what kinds of weapons should be out there. But is that just a step that maybe we just have to take?
Well, I think you also have to look of the population. How much of the population is this? Is this 5% of the population? Is this 2% of the population? Is 95% of the population actually doing it right and not doing that sort of stuff? So it's very hard to create a policy that takes away someone's rights that's 95% of the population because the 5% are wrong. And so do we need to handle mental health? Absolutely. Should we enforce the laws on the book? Absolutely. If you want to talk about public safety, one of the things I think we need to do in public safety is we have crime running amok in Memphis. Everybody sees it. And I think what we need to do is say if crime gets to a certain point, because you have shootings down there, you have car thefts down there, you have all carjackings down there. If crime gets to a certain point, the local government should lose their government tort liability protection. Your job is to protect society. Your job is to make it to where you feel safe to go home, where the kids feel safe to go to school, where you feel safe. If that means that we have to take away their liability protection, which means they get sued for higher amounts because they're not providing that service to the public, then we need to take a look at it.
So that would open them up to larger lawsuits, is what you're saying?
Correct, because people should feel safe in their community. This issue is we're coming here because of Covenant shooting, obviously. But you can't look at the shootings that are happening in Knoxville and Memphis, Chattanooga. We mapped this. We hot mapped this. In Knoxville, there's like 5 streets that are high murder areas. In Memphis, there's 3 zip codes that are high. In Nashville, there's 2 zip codes. Let's take a targeted approach. Let's spend the $75 million in violent crime funds, but let's don't spread it all across the state. You spread it out all across the state, there's not many murders going on. Rapes in our state, where are they happening? What zip codes are they happening in? Where universities are. Right?
I can suggest there's some other places too.
Well, I know, but the highest places are exactly where the colleges are, is those zip codes. So let's do a targeted approach in those areas, give law enforcement the tools they need, and we'll reduce crime very quick. But you also have to hold the locals accountable and not allow them to allow people to get out on bail for no money, and then 24 hours they're right back in after they carjack somebody.
We got to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee. John North will lead us off when we come back.